Welcome to the Girl Sis Man podcast.
For the girls we were,
for the sisters we became, and the women we're becoming. Welcome back, y'all. It has been a little bit of a moment. Yes. Life happened. We took a mini hiatus mid-season, totally normal, but we have been dying to get back to you guys.
Yes, February was a very transient, moving, full of just a lot of stimulus in my mind where I was just bouncing back and forth, but I'm excited that we got the time to sit down and just discuss some things because there are some things happening in the world.
Oh my gosh, yes. That need just some debriefing, y'all. Oh my gosh. First of all, let's just jump right into it. First, let's talk about what the whole world is talking about, which is the Meghan and Harry interview with Oprah Winfrey. Wow. Like, that's how I'm going to start it off. Just wow. First off, let me say that both of these people are so articulate, just so transparent. And personally, I am appreciative that they have come out and told their side of the story. A lot of people, I think myself included in the beginning, was like, ooh, like, where is this going? Because at the end of the day, royal family or not, it's still family business. And I think we've all grown up with the narrative with what happens at home stays at home. Mm-hmm. But I'm very glad that they took the time to separate the institution from the family and talk about how it motivated them to kind of do what they are doing, which is stepping away and making a life for themselves. So let me first say that.
Just so that we're clear, only she has watched the full interview. I'm poor. I guess I don't have that access. I went on Hulu and it says that I don't have live TV, and I'm not going to pay for it. I just saw the clips on YouTube. So Esther will probably take the lead on this because she actually watched it, and there's no business of me saying, well, this is how it is, when I've seen maybe like the same clips you've seen on YouTube. Yeah. But from what I gathered, and like, I'm not saying I followed the royal family, but I really like historic documentaries, and I've watched, shows about Princess Diana, so I'm kind of a little invested. So yeah, we gotta definitely talk about the shenanigans, the debauchery, and the cruel, racist mistreatment of Meghan Markle for the past 4.5 years.
Can we first just say, like, I know a lot of people are like, it's not racist. Let me first start off by saying no one has the authority to tell someone, particularly someone of color, what their experience was, right? I think it is so wildly inappropriate. It is so far out of bounds for anyone to come and tell you and narrate what your experience has been. When it comes from an individual to individual level, when it comes from a press to you level, like, no one can tell you how you felt and how it's treated you. And to see the response, and we've talked about the polarity, right, in regard to the response, because the response here in the US is, I guess, very, very different from the response, abroad. And people are like, well, I don't believe her. I'm sorry, but her truth does not depend on your belief or not. Her truth is her truth. It's dependent on her experience. So the fact that a lot of people think that it is within their wheelhouse, that is within their authority to tell this woman what she experienced, like, we have people like Piers Morgan, for example, like, how dare you talk about the Queen? That was not the experience. This is the third thing. It makes me wonder, first and foremost, have you seen the interview? Yeah. Like, pause and take a moment there. I'm going to encourage everyone to actually watch the interview if you have access to it. And if not, ask a friend and get access to it.
As for Piers Morgan, I feel like the same people questioning her motives are people who we should be questioning their motives. Like, a couple years ago, he did an interview about how he went on a date with Meghan Markle, never heard from her again, and then a week or two later, apparently she was dating Harry. So how would I want to take some information or some news or your perspective that's obviously biased? And that's what we're talking about when it comes to racism, is that racism will blind you and will have you making biased comments. And like, I was watching a clip with Ben Shapiro, and he's like, who has a conversation about a child's skin color? That's never happened. So he's saying, I don't believe that, because no one will ever have a conversation like that.
People have conversations like that within colored families. So how exactly would you know? Like, and who are you? And this is what go ahead. I'm so sorry.
But that's what I'm saying. Like, people live their lives a certain way and they experience life in the way that they experience it. And nobody's trying to say, you know, that your experience isn't real, but you can't let that experience tell you that you can negate others.
Exactly. And I think that that is the forefront, right, of my vexation with this entire thing, right, is that people think that their life experience, right, automatically gives them the authority to tell someone else what their experience is. For example, I saw this post on Facebook and someone was like, I don't feel bad for her, they're playing the victim. I'm like, in what way, shape, or form is she playing the victim by telling her side of the story? Like, it blows me away. And two, it reminds me of the fact that women, particularly women of color, but even just regular women, are so often overlooked. Their voices in any way, shape, or form are always questioned or mitigated in order to belittle whatever source of credibility they have by saying, oh, well, I don't believe, or, oh, here are the reasons as to why, you know what I'm saying? I don't have to pity you. They're not asking for your pity. What they're doing is voicing what their experience was. And in no way, shape, or form does that belittle or negate your experience. And also there's this narrative like, I'm not gonna pity millionaires talking to other millionaires.
Yeah.
And I'm like, why is it that you are so obsessed with someone's status and their financial, you know, gravitas, if you will, and that should determine how you treat them? What exactly does that have to do with their humanity? I'm like, she's saying that she was at a point, a breaking point so severe that she thought about taking her life. You know what I'm saying? And y'all are saying, because she has money, I'm not gonna pity her. And I was like, and you know what? It's very unfortunate because Meghan Markle might not see your comment, but your friends who are better off than you financially, who are going through something, are going to know that you're not the resource that I'm going to go to, because clearly if I'm doing better than you in one aspect in life, then you can't be my support system. It shows your apathy, right? It shows your bitterness, your envy, and quite frankly, it shows your ass. And I'm like, no, it shows your ass. Like, some of you made complete asses of yourself with no regard to how your family, to how your friends who are struggling with similar things, because really, truly, and honestly, you don't know what anyone is going through. And it really just showed your friends that you're certainly not the person to turn to.
I agree with certain things you're saying, in the sense of things don't exist in a vacuum, and we have to take in consideration what time and period we're in. We're in the middle of a pandemic. So I can imagine lots of people who might be waiting on a stimulus check or are displaced. Maybe they lost a family member. In their minds, because of their money, they are exonerated from some perils and cruelties of the life, right? So like right now, they don't have to worry about the roof over their heads. They don't have to worry about when their next meal is coming. But on like your end, they're worried about their safety. There are people who want to do them harm. We saw what happened with Kim Kardashian. People planned for years to rob her. Yeah. So that's the same. So I wish people, before they make their opinions, I guess, out and about, to think about things outside of the vacuum of their own life. It's not black and white. You know, yes, they are privileged in the sense that they have money, they have connections. I mean, God forbid something happened, I guess they could say with Oprah. You know, there are privileges to their status, but there's also some, you know, cons about it, which is their safety. And I just wish people would take that in consideration. You can still disagree with certain things and show people support. Like, I do think there are certain things where I was just like, okay, like, I don't blame her for not following what happened to Princess Diana and all that other stuff, but it's very well known that the British media is terrible. Horrible.
Yeah.
It is well known that the royal family, the tree goes up. There are no branches. Homeboys and homegirls are all about inbreeding, right? So if they're very cautious with what type of white person deals with another white person in their own family. I'm not saying that she should have been like, oh, I'm not going to love you, Harry. What I'm saying is, as I feel like as a person of color, I tend to operate in a way where I'm like, where am I going to be welcomed, not tolerated? So I do think it's okay to say, okay, what they did to you is wrong. They need to be held accountable. But I also feel like I was never going to expect the Queen, Prince Andrew, the pedophile. I was not going to hope that Prince Charles. I did not see any of them open arms welcoming in Meghan. I could never see them.
She just said that they did, actually, that they were very welcoming to her.
Publicly, they were not. That's what I'm saying. Like, I could never imagine them coming out into her defense.
But she was, and that's what they were talking about in the interview as well. She was like, the family received her very, very well. Like Harry also, you know, second and supported the statement. It was never like, I mean, of course, in every family there are some spats, but she was like, her fundamental issue was not with the family. It was the institution. So the way she described it, and the best way that I can describe it to you all who have not watched, think of it as the Bachelor franchise, right? The Bachelor franchise determined what the Bachelor looks like in regards to where they put him up, right? Where they do their propaganda, how they make him look. They make him exercise. They make him look good. But there are, in the franchise, that's totally different in that they have producers, they have managers, the lighting, they have the narrative that they're going to push about you. They control all of that. That's for the Bachelor. So really, you're an individual, but you're essentially like, your existence depends on how they portray you.
Like they pick a villain every season.
Exactly.
And then I guess
so she was saying essentially that they allowed her to be fed to the wolves, right?
And that's something I don't find that surprising. That's what I'm saying.
Absolutely. But but I think that for her it was surprising. And for someone like myself, I personally, before Meghan Markle got to the palace, I never followed. Okay. I didn't follow about Diana. I didn't know about none of
because
these people.
Can I tell you what they did to Diana? That's why Meghan.
I hear it's really, really shady.
What Harry said is like, I didn't want history repeating itself. But the same thing with like Fergie, who was married to Prince Andrew. Like the media turned on them with a vengeance, with a fury. You would have thought Princess Diana was out here running people's cats over and all this other thing. They were questioning for a long time Harry's paternity because, again, like I followed them. So Prince Charles, the woman he's married to right now, he was having an affair with her while he was married to Princess Diana. And Princess Diana did have an affair with a man who had red hair. So people were like, that's not Prince Harry's dad. Like, they were relentless. So that's what I was saying. Like, I understand she did not know, but if they did that to their own, this white woman who was the epitome of beauty, because like people were like, oh my God, Princess Diana is this fashion icon. If this is what they did to their own, why on God's green earth would you ever think that they would do it for you? And that's why I was like, I don't agree with people saying like, oh, I'm not sad about, or I don't feel empathy for you. I feel empathy for her because she fell in love with somebody and wanted to make it work. But like as a person of color, I feel like you can't be overly optimistic when it comes to certain groups of people. Like if I was married to a white man, like, or dating somebody who was of a different race, I feel like I would have some caution in how I would proceed. And maybe she did, but the institution was too big.
I agree with you, but part of me wonders, and again, like I'm obviously an advocate, you know what I'm saying, in support of any woman who cries out for mental health, but particularly this woman, obviously too, because of what she represented, which was possibilities, right, for so many people across the world. But I think that something that you said is that a person of color, you would have, been a little more cautious, done a little more research. Let's just be honest. Phenotypically, Meghan Markle she can white pass. She can pass for white. That's what we call it, white passing. In a crowd of white people, she might not pass as easily for white, but in a crowd of people of color, she can white pass. Mm-hmm. So I think that this is an assumption that her, for the bulk of her life, she has been white passing. She has never denied her black roots, but she's been white passing. So she's not necessarily lived the anti-blackness that many other people of color have. And so perhaps it could be safe to assume that when she went abroad, she could also white pass. Like she would not be looked down upon or would not face the level of anti-blackness or racism that maybe a completely black woman would have. Yeah. Someone who was not ambiguous in the physical features, right? And so perhaps when she went over there, she thought, I'm mixed, you know what I'm saying? Mm-hmm. And maybe not as like something to tout her horn, but she was like, I don't see how it could follow me as much. I think that she thought about it, but not necessarily to the extent that maybe the black woman would have thought about it. Mm-hmm. Do you see what I'm saying? So I could see how she could have been less cautious there. B, like I was saying, I'm a black woman. I, quite frankly, never, and this could be what many Americans are thinking, right? I never give a damn about the palace. And let me tell you why. And this is not to shade them or anything, but in my reality, and the fact of the matter is, the monarchy has far surpassed its relevancy in that It's all great and dandy that y'all still have this lineage, that y'all have, are the longest standing monarchy, and that's all great and dandy, but there's no real governing power. There's no real connection aside from kind of like this celebrity feel to anything when it comes to governing, right? Or to even the Commonwealth. You're really just a face on a franchise. So for me, it's like, and she explained this well, as an American, I thought they're famous. She was like, but over there, they're royalty. And that's a whole different thing, right? But as an American, I would have been like, they're famous. So to me, I'm not going to go over there and be like, oh my goodness, it's the queen. I mean, I guess for the outside to respect tradition, certainly, she's the queen. Para mí, not so much. Yeah. You're just a regular person. With titles and with money.
Would you do that in a foreign country that wasn't white? Like if I went to, I don't know, Dubai and I was meeting a Saudi prince, I would not be like, well, in America, you are just a regular old no. Like,
honestly, this is just how I was raised, and this could be very, very different. I understand that it's different from person to person. I have respect in general for my elders. Traditionally, in my culture, that's how we do it. Your elders, your parents, whatever. But when it comes to prominent figures of authority, I was truly raised, and it might sound ignorant to some people. I treat the CEO the same way I treat the janitor. And you can ask the janitor at my job. Me and him, we are great pals. I love that guy. I also love the guy who's my VP. Like, they're great people. I don't treat them differently, right?
Yeah.
So, like, for me, I'm like, I wouldn't. Like, and I'm like, if for you, and this is my thing too, I would have observed what you individually are tolerating as respect. That's what I would have done, right?
Gotcha.
When I get there, if you're going to ask me to curtsy, I will curtsy, because to you, that is a form of respect. And I will culturally assimilate as to not offend you, right?
And what she did,
she did.
We have to understand too, Kate Middleton, who is Prince William's wife, they were dating for years before they got married. So this is years that she gets to get prepped for.
Yes.
And Meghan and Harry were dating for about 18 months before they got engaged. Were married before the year mark. So for someone who didn't grow up in England, who didn't have time to really prepare for this, I think there was a mixture of different things. And then the racism was just the
proverbial icing on the cake.
Yeah, and it was just like, wow, this woman is having such a tough time assimilating just because of the cultural difference. And like you said, we don't view them the same way that they view themselves in the UK. And now you're also going to taunt her, call her a monkey, call her son a chimpanzee, and then say it's not racist. It is.
And that's also my thing. I'm like, to what point are we going to let overt racism stand and be like, it's not racist? Like take, for example, you have Piers Morgan talking about it's not racist. In what way is it okay to call a woman of color a chimpanzee and think that's not racist when throughout history, the defamation of black women, of black people in general, were comparing them, to animals, to beasts. You know what I'm saying? Like, that blows me away. And that also brings me to the point of, we have, unfortunately, within our global society even, this leeway that we do in regards to how we are very quick to question and defame women of color who have an outcry. When we talk about that, for example, great examples, Michelle Obama. Like, she was, she was a woman of power, of grace, of authority. And then you have people calling her an ape, right? Yep. She's educated. She goes to the best schools in the US and even globally. And I'm like, this is a woman who has not stepped on anyone's toes culturally. Like, she's not doing anything offensive, but she's still being called an ape, right? And when she's like, that's not fair to me, that's, racist. And then there's backlash, like, that's not racist, it was a joke. You don't get to make certain comments and go, that's a joke and that's not racist. Whether or not it was your intention, which, by the way, it was your intention because of all the things you could have said about this woman of color. You called her an ape. Yeah. I'm like, your impact it was racially charged. Yeah. The same thing happens, no offense, when we even take it to basic pop culture. Megan Thee Stallion gets shot, is actually wounded. There are police reports to back this. And people are like, oh, well, you know what? This is why her statement needs to be belittled. We can't take them serious because they have money, or we can't take her serious because, she's a rapper and she shows her body and she's provocative and her rap songs, say that she's a savage. And so therefore she can be treated as such and should not use her voice to say that this is wrong. At what point are we going to defend women and then women of color? When?
I feel like the first question about why is it okay, like why do people feel okay making racist comments, and then later on I was learning in class that there's 3 theories of like how racism comes about. And one of the theories is like racism isn't really racism, it's more about someone being frustrated, and racism is the tool to express their, and which I think is like, that's really dumb. Like if I was angry at a white person just because maybe we had a spat or fender bender and I'm like, you piece of white trash, like that is really odd to me that my frustration would come out in that form.
That's what I'm saying. Like,
and that's why I think the problem is people think that they're racism, or when they make racist comments, it's not actual that you feel this way about this group of people. It's just your frustration, and at the moment, that's how you express yourself.
But why is that the tool you reach for?
I don't know, but I don't think it's that. I think it's the other theory of thought where it's like it's culturally learned, right? Where you're like, we have to talk about the history of like racism in this country. Blackface, it was okay, it was tolerated. People from lower farm hands could watch it with the rich people. Like this was a form of theater of their escape. Racism has been culturally accepted for years, and now we're trying to reform that into it's not culturally acceptable. And it's hard to like say this one thing that we've for hundreds of years have said it is okay is not okay, and now we have to unlearn it. But people still believe in the other school of theory, like my racism. When I say racist things, it's not me being racist, it's just me being angry because I don't see color. You could be purple, brown, orange, and all this other stuff, and it's like,
but clearly you do see color, because when you reach into your handy dandy toolbox, the first thing you grab is racism.
Yeah. It's also the economic theory of racism. So there are people who believe, and it is backed up in history, that economically speaking, racism is a tool that works very well. Because if you think about the slave trade, and even like selling magazines about Meghan Markle, being racist sells more magazines.
Like, I'm like, it blows me away, honestly, truly, and sincerely. And then you have people are so far willing, right, to defame any woman who cries out. A great example of this is my friend, who was this incredible author, and her next door neighbor, she was doing acrobatic yoga at home, and she falls on her neck. Her neck actually broke in certain places. Thank God she's alive, right? But she had her daughter, this small child, run to the neighbor's house and get help, right? Now this is a woman, right? And this is another woman now, because, you know, the child runs to the mom. That's the person that she recognized. And she goes, my mommy needs help. She's fallen. And my friend is like, well, what's happened? And she's like, my mom needs help. But this little girl is so panicked. She's like, I need to follow. Like, I'm going to follow this little girl. So she follows her, and her neck is broken. Like, you see, like, yeah, it's bad. So obviously they call, you know, an ambulance, and these people arrive, and this woman starts screaming as they're trying to like pick her up. She's obviously in an outrageous amount of pain. But at the time, like, my friend was guessing that her neck was broken. And instead of being like, we're going to assume that what you're saying is correct, they literally are belittling this woman. Like, that's a little bit dramatic. That's quite a large, you know, a guess that you've come to. Like, what's your medical training? Like, literally the entire time, instead of helping this woman and taking all the precautions necessary, I don't care if nothing was fucking broken. If she says her neck hurts, if she says something is going wrong, believe her. You know what I'm saying? But they're like, she's being a bit dramatic. She's being a little bit difficult to work with. She finally goes to the hospital. They diagnose her. Guess what? It's a broken neck. And now she's like, I'm suing because you want to know what? I should have been handled with care. And when my friend asked you all to do that, you instead called me dramatic. You instead were like, what's your medical training? Asking this, that, and the third thing. But if you had just listened to my experience, then you would have known that this was actually real. It was a concern birthed out of my reality. And in your present state, in your present reality, it might not have seemed that way. But guess what? Now now she might be quadriplegic. Oh, no. And she's like, who knows? You know what I'm saying? If I could have been further helped, if you had listened to me, if when my friend had said, when you're loading her up, please be careful, instead of brushing it off, instead of belittling me. And here we are. And those are 2 white women, by the way. Yeah. So she's just like, in general, women, and then women of color especially, are always made to feel like they're exaggerating. Whenever a man says something, he's assertive. But whenever a woman says something about an issue, she's probably on the rag. You know, she's a little bitchy. She's emotional. Like, just for once, take someone's experience for what it is. And if you can't do that, say nothing. Support them anyway. and say nothing until further down the line it can be confirmed for you, or just say nothing.
Yeah, and it's not that if you say you believe someone, you're gonna be like, don't investigate things, right?
Yeah.
Because whatever, like if tomorrow I get into a fender bender or somebody robs me and I'm like calling to the police, like, hey, I've been robbed, and they're like, well, were you robbed or did you drop it? It's like, no. You're supposed to take agency of like, okay, this is what happened. And in the midst, you're going to investigate, because like, even if I'm lying, it will come out. But the idea that you have to be on the defense and be skeptic of what I'm saying is really just tell a lot about us as people and how we value women and how we value ourselves. Because if you're out here skeptic when people are calling out for pain, and you wonder why they stop calling out for pain, and we have high rates of suicide or high rates of depression, all these other things that Meghan was going through, how do you ever expect to fix the problem? When in the moment you have the opportunity to address it, and you're like, well. And like, when she was depressed, and now that I'm thinking about it, she's depressed right after she gave birth to her son. She's going through postpartum depression. Well, this is me diagnosing her. I'm not a doctor. Assuming. Allegedly. I believe if she had postpartum depression, which is going to happen to most women after giving birth, plus what's going on to her, how can you still not believe this woman might have wanted to commit suicide or take her life? She did an interview last year about the time she gave birth to her son, and they had asked her how she's doing, and she said something that really like struck a chord with me. She was like, it's not just enough to survive. Like, I'm surviving through this. I want to thrive. So when you say I pushed through, you just survived. You probably just passed the mark. Like, you barely made it. And that in itself should tell you, like, there needs to be reformation in whatever aspect. Just because you made it by doesn't mean that it's sufficient. Don't you want to live your life and feel like, you know what? I made it because I had the resources, because I had the support. I wasn't, bawling my eyes out. I wasn't pulling out my hair out with stress. Like, it's just because you got it done doesn't mean it's okay and that it can't be fixed.
That, and I think too, just to hammer on that one point when we talk about just how we naturally don't believe women, like, I think it feeds into so much, right? Like, you've just seen so much disbelief of this one woman's tale. And then not even, again, we talk about Megan Thee Stallion and her situation, just the response, right, that people had to this woman saying that she had been shot, right? Like, it goes to show you, when you think of women being assaulted, there are like more women don't report it than women that do, right?
Yeah.
It's like, can you blame them? Because if this is the parade, if this is the shame parade that they have to ride to get an inkling of justice, do you blame a woman for not wanting to come out here and be like, I was hurt by someone, I was assaulted by someone? I'm like, you've not made it a safe environment. And then they double down and they go, well, if you were hurt, why didn't you say something then? Mm-hmm. Then if you say something, you're a bad person, you're difficult, you're emotional, you're all these negative connotations.
But why is being emotional like a negative thing? And I was talking to somebody, he mentioned like, women, like, they react out of emotion. And I feel like when people say things like that, they assume women are acting out of emotion, and it has to be
illogical.
An extreme of that emotion, right? Because, like, if you're angry, right, there's several things you could do, right? If you're angry, it might motivate you to confront the situation. If you're angry, you might want to fight. If you're angry, like, acting out of emotion is not the issue. It's the extreme of that anger or that sadness or that happiness. Extremes are horrible. You shouldn't be running around extremes. But the idea, they act out of emotion. I mean, like, if you don't at times, you never acknowledge things. Like, if you hurt my feelings and I'm like, I'm not going to act out of the feeling of being hurt, when am I ever going to come at you about this issue? If you hurt my feelings, if you angered me, if I don't address the feelings that are invoked out of me, when will the time arise?
And that's my thing. I'm like, why? But like, why does emotional have to equal illogical? Right? I'm like,
because they think of the extremes, and that's what I'm saying. They think in the extremes.
Like, that's what I'm saying. But I'm like, it shouldn't be to the extreme, and most of the time, it's really not. Mm-hmm. I'm like, most women will be like, hey, like, you hurt my feelings, like, and I love that. During the interview, she also talked about a spat between her and Kate, and she was like, Kate was so accountable for it. Like, she was like, she got me flowers. She apologized. She was sincere. I forgave her. We moved on. Like, that's what family does. You know what I'm saying? But instead, like, you focus on, well, you cried. Oh, or you must have been playing the victim. Or maybe I was hurt. Yeah. And I was like, and me crying, which is an action out of that hurt, I'm like, does not make me illogical. It makes me a human being. And some of you, no offense, are harboring trauma and you're calling that strength because you went through it without facing that emotion. You're not doing better, baby. You're doing worse. And what's worse is that you are making it so that your own children, right, your own legacy will continue to carry on that trauma. My sister gave us an amazing example. When there are people that truly just are like, I've pulled myself up by these proverbial bootstraps, right? And because I did that, you have to do that because that'll build character. Because I went through that trauma, you too must go through that trauma in order for me to identify with you as a valid person, right? But why not? Because people are upset because it's almost like they feel like they're giving you a silver spoon if you skip that trauma. And she's like, well, why exactly? Why would you take that scar and give it to your child, right? It may not be your child today. Like you're coming from Meghan Markle today, right? But that's the same gun you're going to pick up, that your actions are picking up, and that bullet's going to hit your child too. Like generationally, this will follow you. Your lack of basic human decency. I'm not saying at all that, you have to mollycoddle everyone who goes through something. She's not asking you all to do that. She's not asking you all to be her therapist. But what I do appreciate now is that she's given history to accounts. Because for quite some time, especially with the UK press, they made it seem like, she destroyed a family. Mm-hmm. And quite frankly, that's not what happened.
In fact, had problems before that woman stepped
But also, she might have just saved her family. Truly and honestly. When it comes to her child, her husband, and her coming child, which God willing, she gives birth to in great health.
Yes.
I'm like, she saved their family. Truly and honestly. Like the decision that they made, I feel like it's going to be a great one for them. And I hope that there's healing between their family. I hope that this is nothing that is long lasting. However, I don't think that what she did was wrong. I had a lot of hesitance, like I said in the beginning, because I'm very much for, the cultural, what happens in the house stays in the house. Don't make it messy for your family. Yeah. But again, she didn't even do that. And so I'm going to encourage everyone to watch the interview because I really don't want you to take someone's word for it. I think even the snippets show very much bias, like they show particular parts. Like, please don't take these snippets from the press and run with it. Mm-hmm. This interview was so well done, and it could not have been done better. And it goes to show you that really, truly, honestly, unless you go and watch it for yourself, you're going to be swayed in a direction that if you had all the information, you might not have been swayed in.
No, definitely gonna watch it if you give me the
for sure.
And then maybe we'll finish it up and pick it up another day. But I think, like you said, I think you hit the nail on the head about this speaks to how women, especially women of color, and even in more specific, Black women are treated when they do come out about any trauma or mistreatment that is occurring to them.
Absolutely.
And like, it happens to men too. And I feel like one day, I hope that men will realize when we address issues that happen with women, you in turn are going to address issues that affect men.
Absolutely.
Because we can't live one without the other. And that's why I hope, and I think it's a selfish way to think about it. Like, oh, help me so you can help yourself in the end. But the idea that, feminism is about the equality without sexes. It's not about pushing or having this agenda of women supremacy. It's about the equality of genders. And that also means being equitable. What works for women might not work for men. And hopefully we get to a point where we're like, these are issues that plague women and we need to take them seriously. And this is how we're going to act accordingly. And then these are issues that affect men. And this is how we're going to address it and work accordingly. And that's the hope. That's the hope for our kids, for our kids' kids, and, future generations.
Honestly. And you know what? I'm also going to encourage people to just think, right? Think before you say anything about someone. Think before you make a decision about a situation that is not your own. Particularly because it's just really, I know it seems like a stretch to ask these days, but ask yourself, how would I want to be treated? What is a decent thing to do? There's so much evil in this world. Do we need another negative comment on social media? Mm-hmm. Like, we just don't. Like, just be the good. Be the person that you would have hoped someone could be for you in that situation.
But yeah, I agree that we need to start thinking about what we say and also think afterwards, because you might make a comment and you still have room to grow and be accountable for it. Just to know that you have to think before, after, and during whatever you're saying. And if you see something that you're like, oh, I said that hold yourself accountable and be like, you know what, how can I change this? How can I turn it around? I think that's the issue. If you just start saying things and never follow up, if you never hold yourself accountable, whether it's good or bad. So hopefully this episode is something that has you thinking. You watch the episode with the interview with Oprah and Meghan and Harry, and maybe be more self-aware about what kind of perspective you're taking.
Right? And just what you say and how you can be of support to others who are going through that situation. Guys, there are so many people in the world that are going through mental illness and mental health crises because of this pandemic. And it's going to be a while before we get back to where we need to be. And just honestly, just be kind.
Well, I think it's a good episode. I'm so happy that we're back in action.
Yep. And I guess we'll just see you guys around the next time.
Keep posted. Don't forget to like, comment, and subscribe. We're on YouTube, Apple Music, Spotify, and Anchor.
And literally anywhere else you might listen to a podcast.
We're everywhere. We're international.
So be sure to support, share your comments below. We want to hear them. And we'll see you next time.
Bye.